Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, USA Global TV listeners, and of course, for those of you that are watching us live, woohoo! And this is Talking Heads. I am your presenter today, Mariska du Preez. If you do not know me, I hope that you are going to tune into more of our wonderful shows, and you are sure to see me around. And of course, I work with leaders that is either moving from specialization into leadership or within their leadership journey a little further. So with that in mind, I actually thought that for the next couple of lessons, we will look a little bit deeper into this transition space and add a few of the things that may come up for us when we are going through it. And the very, very first piece of this puzzle is around where do I start? I have now been appointed as a new leader. Now what? Right. And this is sometimes a tricky question, because we might have been in our team for quite some time. And we might have contributed vigorously within that team for quite some time. And now stepping into a different role can feel a little bit scary. It can feel a bit exciting. It can feel, oh, well, there's a whole bunch of different feelings that might be coming up. And of course, all of these things and all of these different states that we find ourselves in drive a whole bunch of questions through our brain on a sometimes freight train. So let's dive into the lesson and see what we can glean from this situation. So, very first, we are looking at the leader's mindset. And yes, it is a leader's mindset because now we have moved from being an individual contributor into a leadership space that is really quite different to what we are used to. And we don't always think about it. So I want to tell you a little story about when I started. So initially I started also as an individual contributor, and I was working on a power utility, a power plant itself, within the milling plant section. Not that that might mean a lot to a lot of you. If you are an engineer within that space, it might mean something. But basically contributing to the environment where I was working and looking at ways to move in my career, which is something that we all do at some point in time during our work careers. So what I was thinking is, well, let's see whether we can try out this supervision space and move into that very, very first step of leadership. So, got the promotion. I was very excited. And then, of course, those questions that I mentioned earlier, they started going on in my mind. And I was wondering, where do I fit? Right? I knew where I fit when I was an individual contributor. I knew what function I had. I knew what gear I was and where I fit into this whole gearbox of people and activities within my space. And now it changed. And I did not know where I fit. So it was a bit of a shock to the system to figure out how this whole thing works. And I have to say, I'm very, very grateful for the leader that I had at the time, because whenever I had some of these questions pop up for me, I could scoot a little bit closer and talk about it, get some advice around maybe what to be doing. So I started figuring out what needs to be done within this space. And of course, also when I was moving into this area, it was a newly formed department. So it made the whole environment even more interesting because it didn't exist before. This was a brand new team coming together and figuring out how really all of us fit together within the space. So one of the things that could have easily happened to me, and does sometimes happen to a lot of folks when they move from individual contributors into that leadership space, is derailment. Yes, that freight train that I spoke about with all the questions that we have, sometimes it goes off track. So I thought, well, let's first look at what exactly is derailment. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, there you go, derailment is the obstruction of a process by diverting it from its intended course. So we are individual contributors. We intend to move up in our career path. We go to that next step, which is somewhere within the leadership domain in all likelihood. And then we have some form of obstruction that takes us way off course, or just literally off the rails. So what are some of these obstructions that might cause this specific phenomena? Now, one of them, and I think it is very relevant, especially thinking about the last couple of years that we've gone through, is that within our environment, well, crap happens. So I thought I would also share this little fun video, which literally shows that we don't always know what the rest of our team's going to do, right? And because we don't know what's going to happen within our space and what our team might get up to within this changing environment of ours, there might be some derailment that happens. So it might be because we didn't anticipate the change that's going to happen. It might be that we didn't anticipate our teammates' reaction and actually stepping into the way of the freight train, literally becoming the obstacle. There is literally a number of things that might happen that can cause us and our team to derail. Now, one of the things as we move on to our 3 tips, we will see that changing the way that we think about what we're doing is one of those key elements that will help us to not necessarily fall prey to this specific derailment problem. So the next one, that might take place, there you go, is, now we have success. Because, hey, I moved from being an individual contributor to a leader, right? For some of us, that equates to some form of success. And then what happens to a few people, and I know that I have come across them, and I'm sure you might have in your environment as well, is that success goes to our heads. Yeah, you can see them in the office. You know who they are. You know when people has had that instant where the success went to their head. And all of the sudden, they are the big shot because possibly they were a big shot to start off with when they were an individual contributor. So they had the answers, they knew exactly what they were doing, they were an expert within their field. Now, experts do not always good leaders make. Because if we cannot translate that to help our team become the experts, then we actually don't help our team members become what they need to become and elevate them. So this, again, one of those derailment pieces where I don't really care how broad your shoulders are, there's no way that you can carry all of it. It's not possible. That's why there is a team. And having a big head, well, it sort of reminds me of a balloon expanding. So even if we have broad shoulders and our head becomes too big, we will literally push the thing that is on our shoulders off, right? And then derail. So that is the second way that we might end up derailing ourselves. Then the third one is around strengths becoming weaknesses. Now, we had a lesson not too long ago that looked at the multipliers and the diminishes that we might experience within our leadership space. And for a quick recap, you are more than welcome to go and have a look at that lesson. It is in our library. But for a quick recap, say for instance, I am an excellent innovator within my individual contributor space, right? So I innovate, I come up with ideas, I'm always there. If it comes to brainstorming, I'm really, really good at this. It is a strength. Now, if I'm going to utilize that strength as a leader in my team, I can utilize it as a strength. The way that I'm going to do it will need to change though. And that's where a lot of people don't do that shift. They don't actually engage that change to keep the strength a strength. And it becomes a weakness or, as we mentioned before, a diminisher. So what happens is we have a team meeting. Now, all of a sudden, I become the leader and we need to brainstorm. And of course, what did I do when I used to be an individual contributor? I'll be like, yay, I have all the answers and I know exactly what to be doing and I have all these ideas. So I am very quick to start throwing them out. What happens to the rest of my team? Yes. The room goes quiet. Why? Well, if I have all the ideas and I have all the plans, Why will they contribute anything? Plus, I'm the boss, right? Automatically, when we become leaders within a space for a team, we don't necessarily cognitively realize this, but there's a shift in power. And taking that shift into consideration when we have these sorts of meetings means that maybe we need to change the way that we utilize our strength in order for it not to become a weakness, right? So instead of diminishing and literally sucking the air out of our team, because that's what we did before with our Innovate, right? We want to breathe life into our team and help to multiply their innovation and their thinking and get a more diverse idea of what is going on around this space. So that's utilizing our Innovate strength as a strength and not transitioning it into a weakness. Then, of course, we're also taking into consideration that very first, well, crap happens in life and business in general, right? If we have a situation like that and we pair it with this weakness strength idea, we also have some situation where we might already have a weakness. So for some individual contributors, and I know specialists especially, some of the more humanness elements of things are a little bit more difficult. It is things that we didn't necessarily have to work with before. We worked with the numbers, we worked with the plant, we worked with the things. We didn't necessarily work with the humans. Because we didn't work with the humans, of course, there's a lot of pitfalls, right? And that is where things such as communication and emotional intelligence and those sort of topics come into play. Now, if we do not have a good grasp on it, it is a weakness. And if we decide not to address it or not to learn a little bit more about it, our difficult conversations might actually turn into dismissals, and not necessarily the dismissal of the person we had the conversation with, but our own. So thinking about what weaknesses we already have and how we might be able to counteract them, as well as this concept around strengths and weaknesses and how some of our strengths might just become a weakness when we do this transition. So how do we solve this? What do we do? Right. And do not fear, except of course if you are afraid of lions. But if you want to be the king of the jungle, here is 3 tips for you to help you with a leader's mindset. So the things that we consider when we think about a leader's mindset is the following. So I want you to think about these as building blocks, right? We don't just have one block and that's it. There's a couple of different things that we need in order for us to build something that we can say, yep, this works as a leader's mindset. And for most of us, when we went from an individual contributor into leadership, some of these areas might be a little bit more bare than others. So the very first one is looking at actually building our growth mindset versus our fixed mindset. Now, we could have done this while we were individual contributors as well. From Carol Dweck's research, this is definitely one of those areas that no matter where you find yourself in life, if we continue building a growth mindset, the likelihood of us elevating in our performance and our success improves. And the reason for this is because when we have a growth mindset, whenever we come across anything we find it difficult or we don't quite know the answers, we see that as an opportunity to grow and learn. Whereas if we have a fixed mindset, and especially in today's time, where we have a lot of volatility and uncertainty within our work environments, a fixed mindset do not serve us. And the reason for this is when we have a fixed mindset, we think that we always, one, have to have the answers, and that if for whatever reason we are wrong, it almost becomes a fatal blow, right? It's as good as death. So when we have a fixed mindset, we don't want to be wrong at all. And when we are wrong, it actually takes our performance a step or more than one step back, instead of helping us to grow and work through it. So you can see how a growth mindset is definitely key for us as a leader, one, within our new space, right? And even for leaders growing within their leadership, to continually help them to grow, as well as helping their teams to grow. So that's the very first tip, cultivating our growth mindset. Then the second one, language. And I know this sounds so foreign and weird. Now, there's two places that language plays a very, very important part for us as leaders. One, our internal dialogue, right? The things, the questions, the doubts, the everything that's going on in our own heads. The way we talk to ourselves influence the way we show up in life. And that language that we use on ourselves has a tendency to spill over into language we use with our teams. And I really want you to take this to heart, because in some of our other lessons, we've looked at the impact of language and words that we use and how it influences the formation of crystals and water. Now, going back to those lessons, we see how important it is to utilize uplifting and building and growing type of language, and not utilize language that's actually destructive. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is around our pronouns. As individual contributors, one of the things that happened a lot for us is it was me and I, right? Because I had this piece of the project, I had this task, I needed to perform said thing. So there was a lot of me and I. Whereas within our team space, there's a lot more around us and you. So the focus that we have shifts from a me focus to a us focus. It's a lot more inclusive. And the pronouns we use needs to show this. Because if we go to our team and we, for instance, have a project that needs to take place and we want input, and we phrase it something like, well, for this project, I need some input in order for me to make sure that we get this just right. That doesn't feel inclusive. That doesn't feel inclusive to the rest of the team. It feels like we have the big shoulders and we are carrying all of the weight, right? It also feels like that head at the top of the shoulders most probably inflating a little bit. Whereas when we use pronouns that is more inclusive and suggesting that we need to find a way of tackling this project in order for us to have an optimal outcome, that feels already a lot more inclusive, right? So looking at the pronouns that we use when we are speaking, as well as the words that we use, not only in our own heads, but also with our teams. And then the next one is, who am I serving? Now, this is applicable to our individual contributors moving into leadership, as well as our leaders moving up into leadership, because we want to be successful as individuals, and we also want to make sure that we grow within our careers, right? That's normal. That's human. That is absolutely human. The thing is, when we go and we get into a leadership type position, it's really important to understand who we are serving. Because if we are serving ourselves, we will most probably not take into consideration what's required for the team. And sometimes what's required for the team might not be beneficial for us as an individual. I want you to think about this. Sometimes it sucks to be a leader. It does. It's not all glory. There's a lot of service in leadership. And that's why I really want us to think about this question about, who am I serving? Am I serving me, or am I serving my team and the group at large? Which, if I really think about it, a few further degrees removed, will most probably be also serving me. Because if my team does really well, it reflects back on me. If my team does really poorly, it does the same. But I need to trust my team to help them to elevate and do well. So this is the 3 tips that I have for us to help us to elevate our leaders' mindset and change what needs to be changed in order for us not to get derailed, as I mentioned earlier. So first one, growth mindset. Second one, our language. And the third one, who am I serving? So having these new tricks up your sleeve and in your back pocket, I would love to hear from you, and you can contact me, or if you have any questions around what we discussed today, you can do that via my email, which is mariska@journeytodiscover.com. Yes, the number 2. Or alternatively, you can visit my website or contact me via LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you and your journey through leadership. And that's the end of our lesson for today. Until next time, enjoy your leadership journey.